There's something powerful about the journey of leadership, the daily steps, the long-term vision, and everything we learn along the way. Welcome to Leadership Labs, where we explore these journeys with the incredible leaders of Aurora Public Schools. In each episode, we hear from those who are helping guide our district toward Destination APS, sharing their stories, their challenges, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Sue-Lin Toussaint, our Executive Director of Secondary Schools. Sue-Lin's journey spans 27 years in education, from teaching AP U.S. history to leading school turnaround to now supervising our district's secondary schools. Her path through classroom teaching, school leadership, and district admin across multiple districts here in Colorado offers valuable perspective on what it takes to support student success at every level. Surprised?
You did well.
Sue-Lin, welcome to Leadership Labs.
Glad to be here.
Oh, thank you. Tell us about who you are first, and then would love to hear a little bit about your role as the Executive Director of Secondary Schools and what a day in the life is like.
Sure. So who I am is a very easygoing, kind of girl next door kind of personality for sure. Grew up in New York, specifically Massapequa, went to Amityville schools. My parents moved to Colorado when I was 18, so I had already started college. And I said, Colorado? I'm not even sure if I can find that on a map. Why are you guys going to Colorado? And I had an aunt who lived in Littleton. And they always wanted to move out of New York, but they also wanted to go west. They didn't want to move north or south. So west was kind of the option. California, too expensive. Yeah. So Colorado became the choice. And not only did they move to Colorado, but they moved to Parker, which in 1994 was very rural. And they live on property to this day.
Wow.
So it was a significant change. I went to school back east, finished school, went to graduate school, but a real turning point and what kind of turned me to education was I studied abroad in Ghana when I was in college and had a plan to do a project in a school. I had no interest in education at the time. Wow. I was going to law school. First, I was going to get a master's in public policy at Harvard. Then I was going to get a law degree at Yale. Like, this was the trajectory. Like, I had a plan.
And you see, the undergrad was at Brown?
Yes. So I went to undergrad at Brown and was kind of following in the footsteps of other students who I really respected, specifically students of color who had kind of followed a trajectory. So they told me, study abroad. I studied abroad, right? And shout out to Jeremy Duru, who's actually a professor at Temple University now, but he kind of followed this trajectory and I respected him. So I was like, I want to do that. Well, my whole plan got flipped when I went to Ghana and I was going to do a research project in a school and they weren't going to have this American girl come here and not share with kids and work with kids. So I ended up teaching there, no intention of doing that. And the first time I was ever in front of a classroom of kids felt like a fish in water for the first time. I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. Like, I love this. I love them. I love the classroom. Like, I loved classroom teaching. And when I came back to the States, I said, I better test this theory because teaching in Africa is not going to be the same as teaching in Denver, right? So I did a summer program called Summer Bridge and taught middle school students that summer and met a young man named Don Toussaint who was going to school to become a teacher at the time. And we taught together that summer. So the funny thing about Don and I is he went into the legal profession and I went into education. So we literally crisscrossed our professional plans. But that summer, I recognized, like, this is who I'm meant to be. Like, this is what I'm meant to do. And God bless my parents who, you know, had this quote unquote high performing kid who, you know, should have been a doctor, lawyer, engineer. Like, those should have been the choices for you. And I'm an immigrant kid. So if you know, a lot of immigrant communities, they come to this country with a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that dream is that their kid will become a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if not a doctor, a lawyer. If you're a nurse, that's good too, right? But education's not necessarily what many immigrant parents encourage. And my parents never carried any of that energy. And they thought it was amazing that I wanted to be a teacher. And they encouraged me in that course of action. And stayed, graduated, got a master's in teaching, and then started teaching right away.
That's amazing. Learn more about you just in that intro too. And I love that so much. It feels resonant for me too. I think you heard me earlier this week. It was on Monday this week at the summit. But I was thinking about my parents and those spaces too. And they came to this country similar with hopes that their kids would just grow up to have a lot more opportunities than the ones that they had growing up. And my mom actually, I think she was super proud when I decided to be a teacher because she dreamed of being a teacher. And but her one of her consejos to me and my siblings was, you get a career doing something you love, something you're good at, and something you can make a living from.
I remember that that 3-pronged advice. That was great.
What is the day-to-day like for the executive director of secondary schools in Aurora Public Schools?
It is different every day, as I'm sure many of us could relate to. I think some of my favorite parts of the days is when I'm able to be in schools on learning walks with teams, when I'm able to meet one-on-one with members of my team, which include instructional directors as well as operations directors. I also support the coordinator at centralized admissions and the director of behavior support services. So there's a variety of need among the members of my team and a variety of people that they supervise and support. So there's always, which I love, I recognize variety matters a lot to me in work, and being able to strengthen skill in different areas is really important to me. And sometimes to be stumped. Like, I'm not sure what to do about this. I've not met this challenge before. So who can I ask about this? What resources can I gather to better understand this challenge? That's when I'm thinking clearly about it and not when I'm up at night thinking about it, right? But I do love challenge. My best friend told me one time, she said, "You really like high challenge." And I've never heard anybody describe it that way before, but I think I am a person who likes high challenge. And sometimes even when things are simple, I'll complicate them a little bit just to like give myself a little bit of rigor and stretch. I do that a lot on weekends when I'm trying to like puzzle together 30,000 things to do. Like, I find it to be fun. So learning walks, being in schools, being a support to schools in that way, being one of many voices to really help strengthen systems in service of student learning. I also think a significant part of my role is working collaboratively with other divisions and departments. We're all chasing the same objective, right? We want to make sure that Aurora is a destination district. We want to make sure that our kids have learning experiences here that they can't get anywhere else, right, in their community. So given that, I feel like I'm borrowing from Pastor Jelinus at Colorado Community Church, but he says we should always be growing fruit on other people's trees. Right? Which is this concept of like, if we're all after the same objective and we all want to make fill in the blank better, then your success should be my success. So I should be looking for ways to support your small mission within the greater mission. So
I love that. You talked already a little bit about what drew you to education. Do you recall the moment or why you realized you wanted to move from the classroom into leadership?
I think very early in my career, I envisioned a future that involved leadership. I think that there were, I was a student class president in high school. In college, I had a variety of leadership roles. So leadership wasn't foreign to me. I think what was surprising is I thought I would be a classroom teacher for a very long time and then move into leadership because I love current day classroom teaching still, right? Yes. Like I teach Sunday school at my church because I love classroom teaching, right? So I didn't ever envision leaving the classroom to go into leadership because I no longer wanted to be in the classroom.
Right.
I think that the transition happened pretty naturally from classroom to a dean position at the high school where I was teaching. There was an opportunity that opened, and then I went to get my principal license but even then I thought, well, I'll be a dean for a while, right? I don't necessarily have to go into administration right away, but there were just opportunities that opened that then provide a challenge, right? They ask a question, are you willing to step into this? And I have to be honest, I'm grateful for the husband I have who has always thought about, well, Sue, what's next? What's next? Well, this is an opportunity. Like, are you going to take this? Like, you don't have to take this, but you should take this, right?
Right.
And I'll be honest, I tend not to think that way. But when the opportunity calls, you have to answer, right? You either have to say yes or no. I loved being a learning community director. I didn't necessarily envision moving away from that role, but then an opportunity opened and called, right? And I think that when given opportunities, they don't always happen on your timeline or in the way that you expect them to come, but you have to respond. So.
Absolutely. Wow. As you think about like what drew you to education and even just what you shared about how the transition from classroom to leadership role present itself to you, how did those experiences shape you as an educator, like that still resonate with the leader you are today?
I think I still have the heart of a classroom teacher. Like, okay, I'm doing X today. How is that going to cascade to leaders, to teachers, to students? And if the answer is it won't, then I lose motivation pretty quickly and then have to ask myself, well, is this meaningful? Right?
Such a good question.
Is this the right work to be doing? So I think that I think that way. I also recognize that the parts about the work that I love are primarily around teaching and learning. So even if I'm meeting with a member of my team and we're problem solving a situation, there's still a teaching and learning involved in that conversation, right? So whether it's one-on-one, whether it's with a small group or a larger group, for me, there's always teaching and learning involved. It's never, well, we have this meeting, we have to get through this meeting. Like, why? No, we don't. Like, what are we going to learn from this meeting? What are we going to teach each other? How are we all going to leave, including myself if I'm the facilitator, how are we all going to leave enriched by this experience? And if the answer is, well, I don't know that we are going to leave enriched, then we probably shouldn't have that, right? So I just think always putting at the forefront value add. How am I providing value add? How am I creating spaces where people feel like they're learning and growing as a result?
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
What about mentors? Do you have anybody who comes to mind who maybe helped to shape your leadership approach along the way?
There are so many.
Oh, good.
And it's interesting. There are a varied lot, right? I remember when I was in college, before I ever wanted to become a teacher, I was in a program called Inroads, which was designed to encourage more young people of color to go into business and to provide them mentorship and internships so that they would eventually move into business positions, right? And I remember a gentleman who would take me to lunch and talk to me about the business. And that was probably my first mentoring relationship when I was like 17 or 18 years old. As
Wow.
far as identity markers, we had little to nothing in common, but he was invested in my success.
Wow.
And took time to invest in me. I think about, and it's funny, I ran into him, that same company. There was a gentleman I ran into at the Winter Park Jazz Fest 2 years ago, and I haven't seen him in probably 32 years. Couldn't believe he recognized me. I definitely recognized him. Like, it was this moment of like, hey, you invested in who I became as an adult. Like, thank you, right? It was an insurance company. But again, even though I didn't go into that profession, they taught me what it meant to be professional. They taught me what it meant to follow through well, which is something I really value to this day. Like those were very foundational skills that then transferred later. When I think about in education, specifically in teaching, I think about Tammy Roan in Denver Public Schools, who taught at East High School for many, many, many years and was an informal mentor. I think about Edna Sutton, who was a more formal mentor when I was a teacher there. In leadership, Mike Crawford, who's now the superintendent of Mapleton Public Schools, who gave me many one-liners that I use to this day, right? And just parts about like engaging with the community and how do you de-escalate conflict? How do you have conversations with people and understand what they really need? Not necessarily what they're saying, but what's underneath that? And learning how to listen well, especially for someone who talks as much as I do. I need mentors that teach me how to listen well. I think of Jackie Capuchin, who is the superintendent of St. Vrain now, who is my supervisor in Mapleton. And, you know, Jackie taught me a lot about what it meant to be a working mom, a professional, someone who would balance and you know, you invest deeply into work, you invest deeply into your family, right? So she modeled that for me. A little side note, it's really funny. I remember one year there was like a Mapleton gala and I had 2 little kids. And I said, Jackie, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. She said, don't worry, my daughter can babysit them for you. Remember, my son at the time was 18 months and my daughter was maybe 5 or 6. And I looked at those 2. I said, listen here, my boss's kid is about to watch you guys. You better behave when you're at their house. So just like these little moments, you know, that kind of make you laugh in retrospect, but many mentors.
That's amazing. You had significant leadership experience before joining APS, but would love to learn what drew you to APS initially.
I wanted to come to APS years before I was here. A couple of reasons. One, I wanted to serve the diverse populations in APS. Now, I was in a community with a lot of diversity as well, but I lived in the city of Aurora. So I was traveling from Aurora to Thornton for 13 years to serve there. Loved it, grateful for it. I would not change that experience for anything. But I always wanted to be closer to home, but also serving in Aurora Public Schools specifically. Much love for Cherry Creek. Don't have a bad thing to say about Cherry Creek, but I really did want to serve in Aurora. And I remember having a conversation years before I ever came here with someone in leadership at the time and said, you know, Sue-Lin, it's great to know you, but we just don't have any open positions right now. So I ended up staying in Mapleton and then served on their executive cabinet for 3 years, and then a position open for a learning community director. As a matter of fact, that year, there are 2 positions that opened, and that's how I ended up applying and going through a 7-part interview process and started serving here. So, yeah.
And speaking of, your learning community was recognized for the most growth on state testing in that year. What strategies do you think contributed to that success?
First of all, big shout out to Andre Wright, who was the learning community director prior to myself for Community P. Some of the work Community P did and part of what created the conditions for that growth is they participated in UVA prior to that and learned a great deal about data-driven instruction.
Wow.
That was a time in Aurora where there was a lot more diversity among schools as it relates to curricular resources. So part of the cohesiveness that they created was really around DDI. And focusing on DDI cycles, teachers created assessments, not a practice that I'm encouraging. I think many of the leaders at that time would say, that's not what got us here, and we wouldn't recommend that. But what it did do is it brought teachers together across schools, and there was a deep level of investment in ownership in that work, and then it translated to student results.
Wow. You now get to lead our secondary schools performance team district-wide. What excites you the most about that work, and what keeps you up at night?
Oh, wow. What excites me is I'm seeing ever increasing coherence and consistency across the high school network, which is Network 7, and the middle school network, which is Network 6. To see leaders really lean in on each other.
You didn't
say that?
6-7.
Yeah. So sorry, don't understand the reference, but that's okay, Jesus, because my phone is ringing.
I just learned about the reference recently, but
I'm not hip.
But you did say that earlier. You did say that earlier.
At all hip, not hip. Sometimes my kids say something, I'm like, I don't get it. They're like, oh, Mom, my goodness.
I nobody gets 6-7, but it's a thing.
I have heard it's a thing and no one gets it.
Yes.
That's as much as I know about it, to be honest. I should look it up.
Networks.
Yeah, I should look it up so I can learn that there's really nothing to it that I would understand. That would be helpful. So the coherence and consistency and collaboration I see in those communities is really encouraging.
Absolutely.
I mean, the last year or so is the first time that we have consistent big rocks across schools. And I think for leaders to be willing to say, I'll give a little to gain a little, right? Like for the sake of the whole,
yes.
I'll invest in this, right? And I'll help us to create something cohesive that's going to help all of our kids. That really excites me. I think what keeps me up at night is school improvement, like true, deep change takes time. So often to not see the results, you see a lot of hard work and a lot of effort and don't quite see the results. You know, it reminds me a lot of like a health journey or a weight loss journey. It's like, oh my goodness, doesn't my weight know that I spent 35 minutes on the treadmill?
That's right.
It should be a big change, right? Yeah. And the reality is all of that investment matters and it finds a place, but sometimes the result takes time.
Takes some time.
You know, I remember my dad telling me once that and I didn't know this, he does not believe he was a true fluent reader till he was in 6th grade. And yet his 1st grade teacher was a part of that, 2nd grade, right? Each teacher up to that point had a piece of that development, but it didn't show up till 6th grade, right? In full. And I often think that's how educational progress is.
All right, transitioning a little bit to some leadership lessons. What's one lesson that has remained constant for you throughout your journey?
No one will lead for you.
Oof.
So people will do a lot for you, right? If you need someone to supervise the playground because you have a meeting in the morning and normally your post is right there by the fence, you can find somebody to do that for you. But no one will lead for you. No one will supervise for you. Nobody will discipline for you, right? Those are things that you have to carry. And as a leader, really, it ends with you, right? Like you're the one who is carrying the weight of it. And people will come carry with you, but ultimately it's yours to carry. And I think that I learned that lesson the hard way when I was a principal and I wanted to be in it with everyone. So I took a CMAS accommodation group. I was supporting a group of students and my eye was not on, like I wasn't double checking around, we had somebody responsible for checking to make sure all the books were back and everything was secure. I wasn't double checking that. And we had a misadministration around science because we had a teacher leave books in her room overnight. Yeah. And I remember having to be the one to tell those kids, those 8th graders, that they worked really hard on that test and their scores would not count, right? And I couldn't stand there and give all the excuses of why I disappointed them, right? I'm the one whose system may have been fine, but I wasn't double checking that system. And as a result, a mistake was made and it wasn't caught in time. Right. So I think what I took from that is you've got to be the one. Yeah. It's not for somebody else to do, and it's not to blame somebody else. Right. It's you. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Wow. A little bit of lighter transition, the leadership playlist. Okay. Any books that either you read a long time ago or recently that you would recommend or that have impacted you?
I have to give a shout out to Other People's Children by Lisa Delpit because it's probably the one book more than anything that before cultural relevance was a phrase that we were accustomed to, at least before any of that, I saw myself in that book and it really shaped who I became as an educator. So I would say that book by Lisa Delpit, but also every book by Lisa Delpit. So I just have a lot of respect for her and hopefully we'll meet her one day, right? And tell her what kind of influence she's had on my journey. I am actually in the process of reading a book titled The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And it's about kind of how hurried our culture is. And like, if we really want like deep spiritual formation, we have to slow down. So really enjoying that right now. I love reading historical fiction for fun. Just finished The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, which was not my favorite Kristen Hanna book, to be honest, but it was good. It was good.
Good. What about music? What is on your recently played music list, or even just your, if you've got a top 3, top 5?
So I would say my favorite artist is Fred Hammond, who is a gospel artist. Not big in choir music, to be honest, which is ironic because I just recently joined choir. Everybody who knows me knows this is all I'm talking about, like a kindergartner. Like when a kindergartner gets the new pair of shoes, that's all they can talk about. For me, it's choir lately. It's been a lot of fun. And I think we get to a certain age and we don't have a lot of fun anymore, so like this has been fun. So I've been talking a lot about it. But Fred Hammond is a soloist and I would say a psalmist, like just an incredible songwriter as well. So definitely my favorite artist. He has a song that's relatively new called Love Never Fails. And I've kind of been playing that on loop. Cool. And it's a little bit of a response to the culture we're in right now. And like how heavy our culture has felt. Yeah. So it's a song of inspiration and hope. So love that.
Love Never Fails.
Love Never Fails. Okay. And he actually sings it with a choir. He usually doesn't.
But that one he does.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. This is our Destination APS lightning round. What does Destination APS mean to you for our secondary schools?
It means providing students ever-increasing opportunities to show their brilliance, whether it's through CTE pathways, more internships, more work-based learning, different coursework, AP courses, IB courses. It's really making sure that kids have many opportunities and that have access to those opportunities, that it's not only for a select group of students, but for everybody. So that's what it means.
Thank you. What advice would you give to educators out there who might be knowingly or unknowingly aspiring to be district leaders?
The piece of advice I would give is a piece of advice that was actually given to me by a colleague who is still in district leadership, but in Seattle now, Kevin King, who used to be in DPS. But he said, shout out to Kevin.
I tell Kevin, every time I see him, he looks younger, more fit, handsomer.
I don't know what he
I don't
does,
know
but
what
he
he does.
figures it out. It must be his wife, Juliet. She keeps him young. But he said, you know, Sue-Lin, when you transition from school leadership to district leadership, you're not the king or queen anymore, right? And he said it like kind of in jest, but I understood what he meant. When you're a school leader, there are a lot of decisions you get to make.
Yes.
You don't get to make them without collaboration and without communication, but you do get to make them. And they happen more quickly than when you're in district leadership. In district leadership, your decisions have greater implications across departments and divisions, which then means like your communication has to be greater, more, all of those things. So I say all that to say, you have to be patient and you have to be collaborative and you have to really strengthen your communication, because it's not as easy as pulling your team in, sharing something, and then pushing everybody out. Like it's much more extensive than that.
Yes.
You should expect and be prepared to get input from many different stakeholders, students, families, staff, teachers, other leaders. So I do think that there's a level of humility that comes with that, that you have to be prepared for.
Yes. Thank you. That's my last question.
Okay.
Sue-Lin, thank you for sharing your leadership journey with us today. From teaching AP history to leading district-wide secondary ed, your commitment to equity and student success shines through every step of your career. Your work supporting our secondary principals helps ensure that students across APS have access to the excellent education that they deserve. I'm humbled that you joined us, honored that you're here with us, and invite our listeners out there to join us next time as we continue exploring the paths of those who are helping guide us toward Destination APS. Until then, keep running your race with purpose.